Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but I think it is fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of IPAs but also for their lagers. Now the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget. It's a style that I know these guys can do very well and one that I've had from them many times before, and this is supposed to be a nice example of that style. So needless to say, I'm quite curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Malmö, a little bit to the south of me here in Skåne, in the very south of Sweden, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Hyllie Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Corporate Rebranding. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget in Sweden for March of 2023, and this is another one of the beers that I just kind of built up because I had technical problems before I went to Japan, and then obviously I was away for about 5 or 6 weeks. So yeah, this should be quite nice, this one. But I've heard good things about it, so always nice to return to Hyllie Bryggeri when they have a new release. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. My first hazy IPA from these guys in a few months actually, if memory serves me correctly. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hyllie Bryggeri before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like in there. If I review beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. And we will of course continue to add to that as time goes on. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again about Hyllie Bryggeri. So, Hyllie Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Malmö in Skåne in the south of Sweden, but the company started off as the homebrewing experimentations of Michael Nathorst, who is from Vintria, a few minutes to the south of Hyllie in the southern part of the city. So for a number of years he was a home brewer, and he built up his own brewery in his garage where he was experimenting with brewing different kinds of beers, and quite a few of his friends took part in the brewing as well. But he started brewing there back in about 2013. But he worked for a number of years in the plumbing industry, and for a period of time he was working 4 days as a plumber and then 1 day with the brewery. But he was also good friends, or is good friends, with Torsten Ekne, who is the original owner of the Beer Ditch bar in Malmö. And this was around the kind of time that Beer Ditch was just getting started. But Michael decided to turn his garage brewery into a proper brewery and then registered Hyllie Bryggeri in 2015 as an official company. But these days, Michael is joined at the brewery by Erik Fritiof, who is a partner in the company and deals with the sales and marketing sides of things. But he's also one of the founders of the Great Swedish Beer Festival. But in 2017, they launched their Psychopipes brand at Brewskival, which is where they release, kind of bigger and more experimental beers. But in 2019, Hyllie and Limhamns Bryggeri collaborated to form a new company that owned a brewery building, and the company started brewing their beers together there. They had a 1,000 litre brew kit, but unfortunately this arrangement only lasted for a few months before Hyllie moved out into a farm near Vintria. But over those few years they'd been consistently building up their sales, contract brewing some of their beers. I believe they were brewing some of their beers up at Bryghuset Fin in Landskrona, and throughout 2020 they were doing that. But they invested in a new premises in Malmö on Stormgatan, very close to the central station, and this was converted into a brewery with a 2,000 litre brewing system. It was a former car park, and they recruited Johan Lagerkrantz to come in as their head brewer. And he'd spent the previous 5 years in New Zealand, learning the trade down there, and they opened their tap room at the brewery soon after this. But as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, Hyllie Bryggeri have produced around 130 different kinds of beer, and there's been about 40 different beers released under the Psychopipes brand. But the Psychopipes ones are usually sort of keg only releases. If I'm not mistaken, there's only been a couple of the Cycle Pipes beers actually released in bottles and cans and things like that. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Hyllie Bryggeri for the moment. Some of the beers I would recommend you try from these guys. The Hyllie, the West Coast IPA, is a very good one of their classic beers. And I would also say the Skånsk Lager is a very good one to try as well. Very, very enjoyable beer, that one. But yeah, those two are the two kind of classic beers for me, but they always do a few experimental things, and they tend to be pretty nice. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, once again, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one. As you can see, there's quite a little bit of, it's a little bit like a kind of messenger type thing there on the front, which is a wee bit different to what we've had from Hyllie Bryggeri in the past. Plain silver top on the can there. As I said earlier, this one comes in at 6.5% ABV, 440ml can. I believe I paid about 50 Swedish krona for this one, so that translates to about €5, £4.50 sterling, maybe about $5.50 American, something like that. But yeah, it says on the side here, on the front here, hey, how's the label going? You know our retailer needs it ages before the release. Can you please send us the finished label design ASAP? We need to send it to print now, or we won't make it. Seriously, I know you're reading. We will never hire you again. I quite like this one. They've obviously something's gone on in the company, and they thought this was quite a funny way to respond to it, or someone's tried to get them to do something, I guess. But yeah, 6.5% hazy New England IPA. Let's get this guy out, and we'll get on with the tasting then and see what it's all about. So yeah. There we are. So, this looks quite nice. Yeah. Anyway, so, as you can see, this beer, it actually looks a little bit more like an American IPA rather than a hazy New England. So, yeah, that's interesting. But before the head disappears, you can see the head is poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, well, more bumpy actually. I'd say a kind of cream-coloured head. You can see the bubbles in this one are pretty medium in size. It's not the foamiest of heads that you're going to come across. But colour-wise, I think this beer actually looks a little bit darker on the camera to you guys than it is to the naked eye. But yeah, it's a very kind of rich and deep yellow colour, this one, like a sort of mixed tropical fruit juice colour. I think that's definitely fair to say. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this one is really quite nice. It's kind of what you'd expect. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour, but obviously you don't have to care about that all that often when it comes to, yeah, you don't have to care about that all that often when it comes to IPAs. So yeah, a little bit of haze to this one. Of course, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oat and the wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use as well. So yeah, certainly looks the part of a modern IPA, I guess we can say that. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then, and see what it's all about. I think we said everything we really need to about the. I think we've said everything that we really need to about the appearance. So let's do it. Yeah. Aroma-wise, this is pretty nice. It's quite... You can tell, and I will say this straight away, you can tell this beer is not at its absolute freshest. That's kind of my doing and the technical problems doing, but yeah, that's just how it goes. The beer will stand up. I mean, these New England IPAs are usually good for the first kind of 2-3 months, and that's when you start to see the kind of decline from them, but this one should be fine. But yeah, in terms of the... the kind of overall makeup of this beer, it's got quite a bright, zesty, kind of citrusy character to it, but then you've got all the tropical fruits sitting underneath. So yeah, all the kind of juicy stuff is in there. You've got a nice kind of bright floral green component to it, and you have got the kind of typical You do have, as I say, the kind of typical kind of malty background in there as well. It's kind of a more oaty leaning and wheaty leaning New England IPA, this one. As I've always said, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to New England flavour. The farmhousey yeasty side of things and the rye leaning grainy side, those are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, right enough. But then you've got the barley malt bread, you've got the barley malt bread, the kind of oaty creaminess, the wheaty bitiness, and then the sweeter side of things. So these are the 6 elements of flavour I would say you need to consider with New England IPAs. But yeah, for me, let's just break this down and describe the aroma a little bit more, kind of in depth. So, aroma-wise, this one, the backbone of the beer, it's you've got a nice little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. So I like how that goes together. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust. There's a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker and a little bit of woodiness in there as well. So you can pick up that, but I would say mainly kind of fresh white bread crust and cracker. On top of that, you have you've definitely got like a lot of fluffy white bread in there. At the back of the nose, there's definitely a wee bit more of a. There's absolutely a little bit more of a kind of wheaty, bitey character coming out of the beer, which is quite nice. And then, yeah, on top of that, I would say, yeah, a little bit of wheaty bitiness in there. And then on top of all of that, you can smell some of the oaty character in this one too. So as I've often said in these reviews, the oaty character is usually a very good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is going to be. So when it comes to the hoppy, when it comes to the oaty side of things, the smoother and creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher your New England IPA is, the drier they are, the older it is. So with this beer, you do definitely get a little bit of a, you do get some nice oaty creaminess in there. You do get a little bit of a, but you do get some of the dryness as well. And I think this beer at this point is maybe getting close to 2 months old. So yeah, it's still good, but not quite in its kind of freshest prime. But there's a sort of sweet spot with New England IPAs. If you drink them too early, they just taste of green. But yeah, so for me, with this one, yeah, you can definitely smell a little bit of the more, yeah, there's a little bit of the more, yeah, I would say there is definitely a little bit of a more kind of, you can smell some of the, you got a good little bit of creaminess to it, and you also get a little bit of the kind of dryness, but at the same time there's a good wee bit of sweetness in there, like there's some of this Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. So, yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is pretty damn nice, actually. I do like how that goes together, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I do get more and more. The more that you smell of this beer, it starts to get sweeter and sweeter, I would say. And just from the aroma and the colour, I do think this is going to be one of these American IPAs that's somewhere between the West Coast and the New England. It has some of the hazy of the New England. I think it's going to lean that way, but it does have a little bit more of the sweetness, and there's a wee touch of dankness to this one, which is more akin to a West Coast IPA. So a few things going on with this one, actually. But yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of things. So for the hoppy side of things with this beer, you definitely have, you've got a little bit of a more kind of, there's a tiny little bit of earthy character to this one. You do have a little bit of a slightly deeper floral note to the beer as well, but some nice bright floral aromaticity. And you've also got a wee touch of a grassy, zesty note in this one as well, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. On the hoppy side of things, one thing I should say is that in New England IPAs, or any IPA, you get 3 types of hopping. So you get early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil usually. That gives you mainly bitterness. You've got late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil. A little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. and then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma. So yeah, these are the things to think about here. But what that translates to in the aroma is that if you have early edition hopping, you've got a very deep, dank, piney aroma. Whereas if you're relying mainly on late edition and dry hopping, it's going to give you a kind of brighter green component. So West Coast IPAs tend to use all three types of hopping. New England IPAs tend to rely on late edition and dry hopping. But yeah, for me, this one, the green component is quite bright, so that indicates like late edition and dry. So yeah, nice bright kind of floral character coming out of this one. Good little bit of zesty grassiness as well, which I have to say I do quite enjoy. And yeah, the way it goes together in that sense is really quite nice. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the aroma of the green component there, but the fruity side of things is quite interesting. I'm getting a good little bit of passion fruit out of this one, certainly some softer mangoes and apricots and a bit of pineapple and stuff like that. It leans more toward the tropical side of things, this beer I would say, but I also get a good little bit of juicy orange. I think it feels like it's something similar, like maybe a little bit of Idaho 7 or Victoria's Secret. I would maybe say that, one of those two, and then maybe a little bit of there's almost a little tiny bit of coconutty character to this one. Would it be a little bit of Sabro maybe? It's interesting. Yeah, maybe a little touch of Sabro or a little bit of Mosaic or something like that. But I can smell there's this wee touch of coconutty character, so I'm tempted to say Sabro actually in this case. So yeah, there is a wee bit of that kind of tangerine-y, orangey note to this one there, but I'd say it leans mainly toward the kind of tropical side of things actually. But yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we try this one and see what it's all about. So let's just get the rest of it out and into the glass. Here we go. And we'll taste this one now. So yeah, this one is the Corporate Rebranding, a 6.5% New England Hazy American. I think it's going to be somewhere between the two, IPA from Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, it's pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah, what I'll say about this one is, it's a solid beer. Is it the best I've had from Hyllie Bryggeri? I wouldn't say so. I mean, the last, well, I forget the name of it now. We had a really good New England double from these guys. Not too many videos ago, and that was really good. That was a beast of a beer. I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, I mean that for me that would be one of my favourite ones that I've had from Hyllie Bryggeri in the more modern times, of course, or the newer beers that they've done. But it's another solid New England IPA, and these guys are good at this style, of course. So yeah, that's it. But it strikes me as being quite a kind of wet, juicy type IPA. It gives you a little bit more dryness in the aftertaste. The green component isn't too punchy in this one, but then yeah, you've got nice kind of fruity, sort of juicy kind of things going on with this one. So yeah, the way this beer goes together actually is really quite nice. Yeah, so let's have a wee. Let's try and break this one down and see what it's all about. So yeah, I think, where do we start with this beer? We'll start in the middle third of the palate, as we always do usually. Don't know why I even say that, but yeah, there we go. So the backbone of this beer in the middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice, fresh, white bready bread crust just coming out of this one. So yeah, nice, fresh, white bready bread crust making its way out of this beer, which is very enjoyable, I have to say. On top of that, you can feel there is toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little touch of woody character in there. And then you've got a layer of kind of Jacob's cream cracker. And I think you get more of that kind of crackery note out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, you've got the quite dense bread crust coming out of this one, which is quite nice. So yeah, nice dense bread crust in there. And then on top of that, you have the cream cracker that I was talking about, and the little woody character further forward. But then yeah, you have a more like I say, you have a more fluffy. You've got a slightly more dense layer of almost like wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one. So that's good as well. So yeah, you've got a nice kind of nice kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there. On top of that, you have a little bit of a more so you've got the wholemeal brown bready character in there. On top of that, you have the kind of more fluffy white bread, so you can feel that slightly more airy, fluffy white bread sitting on top of that. And it's you've got that more airy, fluffy white bread sitting in there, and the fluffy white bread almost gives you a little bit of sweetness, actually. Which is kind of interesting. So the bready character in this beer is really, it gets sweeter and sweeter the further into the aftertaste, but underneath all of that, it's getting kind of slightly drier at the same time. So yeah, and above the white bread you can feel that more dense, above that you can feel that, more dense, sort of wheaty bready character. You can feel that really dense white bready wheaty sort of thing. Yeah. So above all of that, above all of that, you have a more. You can feel some of the oaty character coming out of the beer, and as I said earlier, you know, the oats really tell you a little bit about the age of the beer. This one is aging okay, but not as well as some of the other ones, of course. But as you go down the middle line of your palate, you can feel some of the oaty creaminess there, and as you move out toward the extremities, the edges of your palate, it definitely gives you a more. It certainly gives you more of a kind of oaty dryness, actually. So you can feel that in this beer for sure. But in the dead centre of your palate, there's a kind of sweet, there's a sweet sort of caramelly note coming out of this one. So yeah, a little bit of a sweet caramelly note in the beer. I don't know. I'd say more butter candy, butterscotch. And as you move further out beyond that, it gives you a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite interesting too. But yeah, for me, you get more and more oatiness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. But I think we've covered all the layers in that middle third of your palate. But yeah, the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of white bready build up in there. And the base of that back third of the palate is. In the base of that back third of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust sort of thing there. The bread crusty character, as I've always said, more bitter and dry flavours come out further back on the palate. The sweeter flavours come out a bit further forward. So yeah, more kind of wholemeal brown bready kind of thing there. On top of that, you have a little bit more of a I would say. Yeah, you do get you get a little bit of the crackery note as well, but then you can feel the wholemeal brown bready layer that I talked about earlier. That's there, but it's a little bit taller and more airy. And then you have the above that, you have the more fluffy white bready character in there as well. And again, that's taller and more airy. And you can feel the wheaty layer, the sort of wheaty bitiness, just sitting above all of that, just on that back third of the palate there. And above everything else, you have more of a. You definitely have more of the kind of yeasty, fluffy sort of thing. So yeah. So yeah, there's a more yeasty, yeah, you do get a bit more of that farmhousey, yeasty, bready sort of thing, and the way that everything goes together. So yeah, the yeasty character in this one, there's a little bit of honeycomb there, but it feels like a little bit more of a darker, kind of farmhousey, bready sort of thing above all of that. But yeah, definitely you can feel on the back third of the palate the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of squashes down and condenses together a little bit. So yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice in this one. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, so on the hoppy side of things, I think we said everything. Yeah, I think we said everything we really need to about the yeast and the yeah, we said everything we really need to about the yeasty and malty side of the beer. So we'll start with the green component first. The back corners of the palate there, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness, but as you move further forward on the palate, you start to get more and more. You can feel like a slightly deeper, more dank floral note coming out of there. It's maybe got a teeny bit of piney resin to it, but yeah, as you move, pardon me, further and further forward, you get a little bit more floral aromaticity out of this one. It's got a little touch of spiciness to it, but then round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit more of a kind of grassy, zesty sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this goes together is quite nice in that sense. You've got a more kind of oily, zesty, grassy kind of character out of it. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component of this beer. It's not madly bitter, this one either, actually, but you get a little bit of bitterness into the aftertaste. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a sort of bready build up in there, kind of white bready base, but then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more, yeah, you get a little touch of bread crusty character coming out of it. Yeah, as I say, a little bit of a kind of brown bready bread crust base. Well, no, yeah, more of white bready bread crust base. Then you get a little bit of the brown bready character, and above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So definitely picking up that in this one. But let's look at those fruity characters and see what we have in this beer. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you definitely have a little bit more of a you have a little bit of a more kind of juicy passion fruity note out of it. As you come further forward, you get more and more kind of mango type quality. So yeah, a little bit of an oily passion fruit, a little bit of kind of oily mango in there as well. And then you have a wee touch of, there's a little bit of a kind of apricot-y quality when you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But above that, there's a wee touch more, there's definitely a little bit of a more kind of pineapple-y note coming out of the beer too. So as I say, I think Idaho 7 or Victoria's Secret or whatever, but then the front of that front third of your palate, you start to get more of a kind of orangey character out of this one. I really thought from the aroma there was Sabro in this, but I'm not 100% sure now. But yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you absolutely get more of a you absolutely get more of a kind of oily, tangerine-y, orangey character coming out of this beer, which is, like I say, very, very nice, and that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, what interesting stuff. So on the fruity side of things, generally speaking, it leans a bit more toward the tropical side, but then you get more oily character out of it the further you go into the aftertaste. But I think at that point we've said everything we really need to. I think at this point we've said everything that we really need to about the fruity side of the beer. But yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things then, to round off this review, for me, this beer is mid-bodied. I think it's right in the middle of the spectrum. It's mid-bodied, for sure. Carbonation is very smooth. It's got a nice kind of oily feel to it. So yeah, it's kind of yeah, mid-bodied, slightly more oily, good little bit of smooth carbonation. It's kind of got a slightly clean character to it as well, actually, which I quite enjoy. But then beyond that, you have beyond that, I think you've got in terms of IBUs, maybe about 50-ish, 40 or 50 IBUs with this one. You can feel that the bitterness builds in this beer a little bit the further into the aftertaste you go, and it's maybe for that reason that I would say this is more of a kind of American IPA rather than a New England hazy. The bitterness does feel a little bit higher. You do get a bit more kind of piney resin and floral spice lingering into the aftertaste here. So there's a slightly bigger green component to this one. I would definitely say that. But on the malty side of things, it's got a bit of dryness to it, which builds into the aftertaste. You've got a bit of smoothness in there and a little touch of sweetness. The fruity character is quite tropical, a little bit oily as well. And then you, beyond that, you have you've got all these nice kind of oily, fruity characteristics coming out of this one as well. So a mix of mainly leaning toward tropical fruit, but you've got a little bit of a more oily, citrusy thing going on in this too. But yeah, an interesting beer, this one, and quite solid. Not the kind of best and craziest one I've had from Hyllie Bryggeri, but still pretty damn decent. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Corporate Rebranding, a 6.5% IPA from Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hyllie Bryggeri as well. We will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.